How did you feel it when you heard about the sale when AMI sold the Olympia and the whatever was left of Muscle and Fitness magazine or whatever to Jake Wood, right, the promoter from Wings of Strength? How did you feel about that announcement?
I thought when I first read that, I thought I got to read this again. I got to make sure that this isn't a joke or something because honestly, for what there is of bodybuilding, Jake Wood might as well be walking on water right now, as far as I'm concerned, because he came along. So many people over the years have come along and they said, "Well, I would do this and I would do that, and you're doing this wrong, and you got to do," and then they would just keep walking. Jake Wood actually saw the situation, thought about what he could do, and reached into his pocket and pulled out his checkbook. And out of 7.6 billion people in the world, he's the only guy who did it. So, I thought that was, man, especially for women's bodybuilding, because I thought the worst affected out of all of this machination of bodybuilding and its struggle to evolve with the culture, the counterculture, and the online culture, is that women's bodybuilding really was the redheaded stepchild and got the most abuse from everything and saw the greatest decline from its heyday. I mean, you got to remember the Miss Olympia used to be held as a standalone event in the Felt Forum in New York City's Madison Square Garden, sold out. It was a sold out event in New York City at Madison Square Garden. Now it got relegated all the way down to a sideshow in a fitness expo. So imagine the demoralizing effect that's got to have on the women. And God bless them that they just kept coming back and kept coming back and had enough of a love for the sport to keep doing it and satisfying their fan base. And if you want to disparage their fan base and call them schmoes or deviants or whatever, that's really unfair, because these are the people who are supporting women's bodybuilding. And if you don't like women's bodybuilding, that's fine. You don't like women's bodybuilding. Go find something that you do like. Don't ruin it for the people who do like it. And the fact that Jake came along and saw this need and reached into his pocket and came out with, swinging a checkbook and making things right, and basically single-handedly resurrected women's bodybuilding with Wings of Strength, and now when the Miss Olympia is coming back, I think I cannot say enough positive things about this man for what he is attempting to do on his own dime.
Hmm. And when the women's bodybuilding was canceled from the Olympia, from the Arnold Classic, it was basically explained as the lack of interest from the audience. What was your position on it? Were you against them canceling it, or how did you feel about it?
I felt terrible about it. I felt I couldn't believe that they were starting to hold it as a sideshow at the fitness expo. What a disgrace! Miss Olympia. That's opposite Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia makes 800, what? How many hundreds thousands of dollars on the prize, and you got Miss Olympia's not even making 30 grand. I mean, what the hell? I don't think. I thought the audience was always there. Did women push the envelope to the point where maybe they were making what their image represented a little bit more finite in its appeal? Possibly. Were there other divisions that came up that offered more, of what guys were looking for? Fitness, figure, bikini, classic women's physique. Absolutely. That diluted the pile too. But ultimately, women's bodybuilding is an acquired taste. It's got a following. It may not have the same following that the Kardashians have, but it's still a following, and I think that it's a following that wasn't promoted to. I don't think the audience of women's bodybuilding was treated any better than the women were treated themselves. And I think if they had actually put time, energy, and money into promoting women's bodybuilding to their base, they would have had a little bit more savory a result. But instead, I think they just abandoned it. I think they took on herd mentality when it came to what people thought other people wanted or were interested in. And I think the powers that be made an unfair decision in deciding what the people wanted and took women's bodybuilding out of the equation. They said, they'll argue all, there was not enough interest in it, people weren't buying tickets. Maybe you weren't packaging it right. Granted, it's not the most sought after division of the IFBB, but it still is, and it's still Miss Olympia. It still has a history and a lineage and a host of past winners that should endure the respect of maintaining that title.
You've been covering Olympia and the sport for many, many years now, right? Since the 80s, 90s, right? Do you think the prestige of the Olympia title is the same as it was, or do you think it was declining, or how would you rate it, like now versus the 90s and the 80s?
Oh boy, that's a good question. The prestige of the Olympia in the old, let's call them let's call it the Arnold era, and then modern bodybuilding. So I think modern bodybuilding started right after, the Arnold era. We had some incredible champions, throughout, the 80s, and then the 90s things really took off, and that was really, catapulted us into the modern era. There's always, the evolution always gives you like a ramp or ramping up. It's never like you flip a switch. You never go from like Arnold to Jay Cutler. You went from Arnold to Samir to Chris Dickerson to Lee Haney to and then you got to Jade. So there was an evolution based on the bodybuilding purists of the Arnold era. Mr. Olympia in our world was absolutely the most prestigious thing that you could possibly imagine. Even getting to go to the show, because remember, they used to be held in Finland and Austria and Germany. They were held all over the world. It wasn't until the modern era that they were first really held in Vegas. They were held in Chicago a couple times, and then it became Columbus, and then it became Las Vegas became the Olympia's home, and rightly so. I think once it got to Vegas and it got the attention of Vegas itself, and remember, initially it was held at the what's the name of the hotel? Mandalay Bay. And Mandalay Bay was a really nice hotel, especially when it was brand new. When it first got there, it had a tremendous venue. It elevated the Olympia to this almost like the red carpet in Hollywood. It was in Vegas. It was at the big casino hotel. Everything self-contained. All of our rooms had these great views of the strip. And when you were there, it was amazing. I think later when it got when Wayne D'Amelia stepped away and it got taken over by Weider, operatives, and they lost to Mandalay Bay and it went to the Orleans, and then the expo was held in the convention.
Why did they? Do you know why they lost? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you know why actually they lost the Mandalay contract? Because obviously the Orleans is a terrible hotel, in comparison to the Mandalay Bay, obviously.
Yeah, I do. It was promoted when it was at the Mandalay Bay. It was promoted by Wayne D'Amelia, and Wayne D'Amelia had a falling out with the IFBB, and he became persona non grata, no longer the promoter. He personally had the contract with the Mandalay Bay and the contacts, and in his final fuck you to the Olympia, he said, I'm not relinquishing my position at Mandalay. You're not going to have it there. And he made it so that they couldn't have it there. So they had to find someplace else to have it. And it just seems so odd to me that the only other alternative.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Shithole Orleans hotel, like off in the corner.
I never understood that either. Like, why Orleans?
There was nothing in the middle.
I know, right?
It was either Orleans or Mandalay Bay. There was no other option.
Crazy. So yeah, you were making a point. So you were going for a transition from Mandalay to the Orleans. So the prestige of the Olympia, I mean, how would you rate it right now?
I think when it made that, I don't think it ever really fully recovered from that indignity. I think now that Dan Solomon has it and it's no longer in AMI's hands, and Jake has it, and Dan Solomon, who did a phenomenal job this last year, bringing the Olympia back. I think now it's going to have more prestige than it's ever had by a factor of several thousand. I think right now you're going to be seeing an amazing renaissance in the Olympia, and a real big, strong appeal to the mainstream. I think you're going to see a lot more promotion in mainstream venues where we never saw it before. And I think you're going to see bodybuilding become definitely more popular in the world today.